All right, welcome to Destination the Show, episode 13. Jamie Cameron, as always, here with Jeremy Nygaard, coming to you from Allentown, Pennsylvania, and wherever the hell you are.
Woodville, Wisconsin.
What's up, man? What's new?
Well, you've challenged me to stay off of the Twitter machine today,
Good.
even though it's not Twitter anymore. But whatever. So I watched a little middle school basketball this afternoon. Went out to eat and have not seen anything since about 4 p.m. So everything that we're about to talk about that's happened in the last 4 hours will be completely new to me.
This is very exciting. Before we dig into that, I have to ask, what is the typical over-under of a middle school basketball game?
I mean, it depends on the quality of the teams. You're gonna get teams in the 30s and 40s usually, and the losing team, depending on how good they are, could be in the teens or could be also in the 30s. So I do also have my children still awake. So if you hear them in the background, that's
Right on.
that's
They're
what's.
welcome. They're probably a vast improvement on your podcast performance. So if you want to sub out at any time.
I'll bring the 9-year-old. He can talk to you about sport night.
There you go. All right. Well, let's dig in. Like Jeremy said, so we're gonna do the extra lame version of what Cespedes Family Barbecue guys did, where one of them doesn't know about any of the trades on trade deadline day, and then they kind of read through them. We're gonna do an incredibly lame version of that with 40-man roster ads and Rule 5 draft protections, which is like the nerdy Destination the Show way. Before we do that, a couple of news and notes that I think, one happened today, so maybe you don't know about it, but it's certainly not a surprise. The Brewers have a new manager. We're not going to talk about that today because we've got too much other stuff in the mix. Sonny Gray rejected the qualifying offer, as I think 100% of Twins fans expected him to. Final thoughts on that trade, if that is it for Sonny Gray in Minnesota?
Yeah, I think if you could have went back in time and said, "Here's the deal: we're going to have Sonny Gray for a couple of years. We're going to give up this first round pick, and in return, we're going to get another first round ish pick with probably more money attached than what Chase Petty got."
Yep.
And get 2 really good years of Sonny Gray, you make that trade every time, right?
Sure.
And that's that. So I think it was a good trade ultimately. I don't know that he performed the way that he would have liked to perform in the playoffs, but I would be shocked if he didn't get the $50 million to get the Twins that first pick.
Oh, he'll get it.
And I am, not at all surprised that he turned down the qualifying offer. I think there's some times that it makes sense to take it. It didn't for him, and good for him for performing well enough that he without a doubt could turn down. Was it 20 to 23 million? I don't even remember what the number was.
20.7. Producer Theo will immediately come through
Yeah,
with the exact number, I'm sure.
but I mean, you turn that down, and the thing that I'm 20.7. So the thing that will always interest me is if he could get more than that on a 1-year deal, right? I mean, that's the reason for turning it down.
For sure.
But being guaranteed 20 million and being guaranteed no qualifying offer next year, obviously at his age, you don't think about it, but
Yeah.
it doesn't shock me when guys take the offer because it's like that's a huge amount of money and no restrictions in a year. Not you can't get it twice, obviously, but I think it worked out really, really well for all parties involved.
Agreed. 100%, man. Final word on the Sonny Gray trade. He amassed 7.7 F4 in 2 seasons with the Twins. That is a great return. Like you said, they're going to net that draft pick. That'll be worth about $2.8 million to their draft pool. And I was curious, so I looked this up just to give folks some type of perspective about what 2.8 million translates into, right, in draft terms. Here's some notable guys in the past couple of drafts that have signed for around that dollar value. 2021, Colson Montgomery, now White Sox top prospect, and Gavin Williams, now flamethrowing Cleveland Guardians pitcher, 2022, Spencer Jones, Aaron Judge 2.0, Noah Schultz, Drew Gilbert, and 2023, Colin Houck and Kevin McGonigal. So these are not like afterthought prospects, man. I mean, these are like legit dudes that the Twins, if they play their cards right, could end up adding through this compensation pick.
And even without that, it gives them way more flexibility. So if there's a guy that they like in the, that would go, because I don't, where are the Twins going to end up? 23-ish, 24?
23, 24 right now, depending on some shenanigans.
And it could still move up, right? If teams end up dropping some picks. But I mean, it gives them the ability to potentially see a guy in the teens that would take whatever that money is, get floated down, because now the Twins can package some of that new money with the old money and potentially get a guy for, $3-4 million that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. Or take a guy maybe off the board that they like more and then float some guys later, take more shots at high school type arms in rounds 5, 6, and 7. So the added money is great if you can get one dude, but it's also great that you can now kind of flex that money around and get more prospects. And the Twins have had really good drafts lately, so that's exciting.
Really good drafts for sure. I think the off-season episode that I'm looking forward to most recording with you, man, other than like trade stuff, is breaking down the bonus pools for all three teams after the lottery and after the comp picks are announced for the small market teams. That should be super fun.
Yeah, that'll be great.
All right, here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to spend a little bit of time on AL, NL Rookie of the Year. So those are just announced. Manager of the Year announced tonight a little bit before we started recording. We're going to talk about and cover the prospect promotion incentive pick. So that's some complex nonsense. Hopefully we can demystify that a little bit. And then there was a trade today that we need to cover, and we're going to blind announce the Rule 5 protections for the Brewers, Cubs, and Twins. That should be fun, man. Let's dig in. All right, Rookie of the Year. Don't need to go much into the numbers here, but quick breakdown. For the AL, Gunnar Henderson brought it home. Second place, Tanner Bybee. Third place, Tristan Casas. Fourth, Young. Fifth, Diaz. Sixth, Yoshida. And seventh, one, Eddie Julien. That's pretty exciting. In the NL, Corbin Carroll brought it home. Kodai Senga, second place. James Allman, third. Nolan Jones, fourth. Matt McClain, fifth. And some guy I've never heard of named Spencer Steer in sixth place. You ever heard of that guy?
No, I've only heard rumors. Never actual stories.
Thoughts on Eddie Julien getting votes, and are you surprised that Royce Lewis didn't get anything? No shine.
So it was top 3 only, right?
Yep.
So I think that's kind of why it's less surprising that he didn't get votes, because Henderson was going to be on all of them, right? So if you're not one of the other top 2 rookies, you're just not going to get votes. Julien getting a couple of third place votes from, I believe, AL Central writers.
That's right.
Makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
Royce Lewis really didn't do his huge damage until really, really late in the season. I think actually probably after people kind of lost interest in the Twins and then in the playoffs. And I'm assuming that a lot of ballots maybe were cast even before that happened. That's just an assumption. Obviously, I think when you look at the 7 names that you listed plus Royce Lewis, there's no reason to think that Royce Lewis isn't going to be one of the top 3 players out of this rookie class.
Yeah.
But over the, just the longevity of a year, being hurt, starting the year hurt, getting hurt, it makes sense that he didn't get the votes. But the nice thing is that I think Royce Lewis looks for things to motivate him. And then gets gets that working for him. And this is only going to be another reason to have a little chip on the shoulder. And Royce Lewis is probably going to add another plate of 45s on each side and hit 35 bombs next year. So
Let's go. Let's
good
go.
good for the Twins, and really not great for Royce Lewis. He wasn't going to win Rookie of the Year. So
For sure.
end of the day, I think it's a great story. And for Julian to get some votes, that's excellent too.
Yeah. Extraordinarily strong class overall of rookies. Here's my other question I got to ask you, man. So we're about to really get into the meat of the off season, right? And I think more than I can remember, although this isn't exactly an area of expertise for me, there's a really fascinating crop of players from Japan and Korea coming over via posting to Major League Baseball this year, or coming up in 2024. And in Kodai Senga and Yoshida, you've got a second place Rookie of the Year and what is Yoshida, sixth. Do you think that makes a more robust market for Japanese players this offseason? Thinking about Yamamoto, Imanaga, Yuki Matsui, who's a prominent reliever. There's some really great talent coming over.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cyclical how that works. Because if you have a good experience, you're more likely to go back. If you have a bad experience, as the Twins have had in both Korea and Japan in the last dozen years, I think you're maybe a little bit more skeptical at that success. But when you see the success around baseball, it's hard to ignore. When you see how well these teams do in the World Baseball Classic, it's hard to ignore. When you see huge world prospects performing on that stage, it's hard to ignore. So I think it's not necessarily that these past successes are inflating these guys' value as much as it's just, hey, this is good baseball and these guys are good players, and as a result, we want to try to get that in our organization. And I think combined with more teams looking to lock up like pre-arb guys, free agent classes just aren't as good. So when you combine the lesser free agent classes with these new potential players, it just helps drive their market up that much more. So again, really good for these players, really good for these leagues, and that these guys are getting more exposure and then doing well in the major leagues.
Dude, I'm ready for people to start signing. I'm fired up.
But then you got to realize that really happened until February.
I know, especially in the case of the Twins. That's so disappointing.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on rookie of the year, folks, or want to move on to PPI?
I want to move on because the PPI is a very interesting thing, and I think you understand it and explain it well. So I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about this.
Okay. So we'll do a quick overview of the PPI, and then we'll get into some kind of back and forth on it, right? So Corbin Carroll and Gunnar Henderson both earned the Diamondbacks and Orioles, respectively, a PPI pick that stands for Prospect Promotion Incentive. They're the first pair of players to do that. Julio Rodriguez is the one guy who previously did that for Seattle. Here's the deal. PPI picks were added to Major League Baseball rules as part of the 2022 collective bargaining agreement, right? So here's basically you have to fit a couple of criteria in order to qualify. You have to appear on 2 of 3 designated preseason top 100 prospect lists. You got to be in Pipeline's top 100, ESPN's, so Kylie McDaniels, or Baseball America. You got to be in 2 of 3. Don't know why those were the designated 3. That's a conversation for another day. You've also got to be rookie eligible, so 60 days or less of service time. If you win Rookie of the Year, having met those criteria, or you finish top 3 in Cy Young or MVP in your pre-ARB years, you can earn your team a Prospect promotion incentive pick. So you earn your organization a pick directly after the first round of the subsequent MLB draft. You can only earn one, right? So Carroll and Henderson are done. So if Gunnar Henderson wins MVP next year, the Orioles do not get another pick. You can only get one. And those are awarded in reverse order of winning percentage. So Arizona will pick first, then Baltimore. Only mentioning that because that's the opposite of how first round order is determined, where it kind of depends how far you go in the playoffs. Obviously, the Diamondbacks made it all the way to the World Series. Tentatively, those picks will be 31st and 32nd overall, although there's some aforementioned shenanigans with organizations potentially dropping in the draft due to spending. But ballpark, you're looking somewhere in the realm of like 2.5 to 2.8 million per pick. So that's kind of the overview. What are your thoughts on this, man? Like, do you think this is having the intended outcome of organizations more aggressively promoting and kind of fast tracking their top guys?
That's a good question, because I think in the three cases that guys have earned these picks, I don't think anything would have been done differently if this wasn't here, right? Julio Rodriguez was going to debut with the Mariners last year when he did.
Mm-hmm.
I think Corbin Carroll and Gunnar Henderson both debuted. Did Gunnar Henderson come up a little bit later? Or did he debut at the beginning of the season?
I'm not 100% sure.
So I think the idea is the other part of that too is like Bybee gets a full service year.
That's right.
So I think there's other things involved in this new CBA that maybe help it. So Tanner Bybee finishes second and gets a full service year, even though he didn't play the full year. And I think that type of stuff, even though it's harder to understand because there's not like one place where you can just go and see all the list of names and how this all works, I think that is going to help get guys promoted quicker, because it's like, wait, if we hold them down like we did with Chris Bryant to get that extra year, it's not even going to work for those 19 days or 21 days or whatever it is. So I think not just a PPI, but all of these rules in place will help. I don't necessarily believe that it played a significant role in these three, but it certainly will play a role as we continue to move forward and teams reap the benefits of having this. So yes, I do think, but not necessarily because of these three examples.
Yeah, that's real. So let me ask you a different question then. And we've kind of had this conversation before, but I'm going to really put you on the spot and ask you to be even more specific.
Okay.
Most likely, Brewer, Cub, and Twin to win their organization a PPI pick in 2024. You only get one from each organization.
Cade Horton for the Cubs.
Agreed.
I think there's a chance, and if I was the Cubs, I would not bring him up out of spring training, right? I would do exactly the opposite of what this is intending to do. I would bring him up later and hope that he earns that full year.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to have him break camp, because he could be like the fifth starter type, and you just don't need a fifth starter in April for the most part. Chiriel for the Brewers, I think is obvious. I think he's the type of player that could break camp and earn them a pick, not necessarily because they're going to bring him up earlier because of that, but because he's a stud. And then Brooks Lee, I think, for the Twins is probably the pretty obvious one. Again, I think Brooks Lee's time with the Twins is going to come when opportunity presents itself by means of injury.
Yep.
But I think those three guys are probably, Pete Carl Armstrong, I think could have an argument. But I think those other three are probably head and shoulders above anybody else is in terms of earning that pick. I think Pete Carl Armstrong could maybe factor it down the line, but as far as those three, I think each team has a really good shot. I don't know what happens when the spring rolls around.
Yeah, for sure. I think PCA is the one guy of the guys you mentioned that you can make a strong argument for, just given that he is likely to break camp with the Cubs. Whereas, as you mentioned, I do think we've maybe misspoken on Horton's timeline a little bit and kind of dubbed him as potentially like a mid-year guy. I do think he's kind of capable of being like a May call up early in the season, depending on how the Cubs offseason goes. But for sure, PCA with the floor of speed and defense and the value that that's going to accrue for him, absolutely seems like a logical guy. If you had to break camp with like one guy, if there was one guy, you can choose like any org, any of the three or all three, who you're like bullish on them breaking camp with a big league team. Anyone really jumping out for you?
Yeah, well, it would be Shario, and I think
Yeah.
because he's been so good in the minors and is having a really good winter and is going to be that type of player. Like, I don't think it's unfair to mention him with in the same breath as Julio Rodriguez, right? As far as impactful, being the face of a franchise, being the big name. It's a little bit harder with pitchers because it's every 5 days, and so there's an opportunity there, and I think the Brewers are going to really lean into going kind of reload here. They're going with a guy that has some experience coaching younger players, and when you lose your manager, kind of lose your identity, it would be pretty easy to say, hey, we're gonna now bring this young guy in and try to jumpstart this fan base that we've kind of alienated by letting our manager walk.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I saw like it's funny that you said that about the Brewers potentially taking a step back because I kind of agree. And I know we've talked about this a lot. I feel like we've commented often on like, wow, it's just like such a fascinating time to have a podcast about these three organizations. They're all in really interesting moments, right? Like at the end of last season, they're all competing for the playoffs. Brewers and Cubs both have at least top 10, if not top 3 to 5 farm systems. Twins are now taking a step back in payroll. Brewers might be taking a step back. Cubs might be in the mix for Shohei Ohtani. Like, I feel like this offseason is going to be absolutely bananas.
And that's without a crazy free agent class.
Right.
I mean,
I feel like the trade market this offseason, though, is going to be insane. From a Twins perspective, that's how they're going to get their guys. And then there's some legit, incredible pieces. Juan Soto, where is he going to go? If you look at like the top 25 kind of like trade chips list versus the top 25 or 50 free agents, I'm so intrigued by the trade chips, less excited about the free agent list.
But the thing with the trade chips is the more they are, the more dominoes have to fall in order, right? So obviously Ohtani is going to be a domino, but he's not going to pitch. He's going to be like limited to DH probably quite a bit this year. Teams aren't going to wait for, like, they're going to make their moves and hope that they can get Ohtani. And I think there's probably just a real small group of teams that are really in the mix for him.
Agreed.
The trade chips are going to be harder because it's like if you're looking for an outfielder, you want Juan Soto. And nothing is going to happen with outfielders until Juan Soto gets moved. And he doesn't necessarily have to get moved.
Mm-hmm.
And the Padres right now, with what happened today, it's like, well, this might take some time to really figure out. Because as far as I know, there's some financial issues happening, right, with that club. And so there's just a lot of unknown. And if you're waiting and waiting and waiting and not pulling the trigger on these trades, it might be a really slow trade season until we turn the calendar. And I know that's not what you want to hear.
It's not what I want to hear, man.
That's more and more what we've been seeing lately too. And that's kind of disappointing. I love how like the NFL offseason starts and it's running, right?
Oh, 3 days before the NFL offseason NFL free agency starts, you know what all of the deals are going to be.
And NBA, boom. It's like as soon as the clock ticks to midnight or whatever it is, it's like these deals start rolling in. But then you always have these late trade things where it's like, just make the trade. Just make the trade. And I think baseball is going to kind of be that same headache this year. I hope not. I mean, I loved when the winter meetings were full of action. And now it's like kind of just groundwork being done, and then the winter meetings break, and it's like, now we wait.
Now
And
we
that's
wait.
disappointing.
We will see. Okay, let's move on from Rookie of the Year, Prospect Promotion Incentive. Let's talk about Rule 5 Protection Day before we dig into the who protected who. A trade happened today, man. Did you see this? Did you happen to see this trade?
So I did see this trade because this went down, I would say, 1:00.
Yep.
And so I did see this trade. If you wanna talk about it here.
Okay. So Brewers and the Phillies made a trade. Phillies sent 26-year-old infielder Oliver Dunn to the Brewers for Robert Moore and Henry Mendez, the Brewers' 15th and 27th overall prospects. And this was obviously prior to teams announcing who they had added to their 40-man rosters for protection from the Rule 5 draft. Jeremy, any kind of high-level thoughts on this trade from the Brewers' perspective?
Yeah, I thought it was a good trade for the Brewers.
Yeah.
I don't have these lists in front of me, but we discussed them adding an infielder, right? And how I was like, I don't know if you want to do that. Talked about how the Brewers have options at the infield, but maybe not like options right now. And Dunn, I think, provides that, right? He was going to be he was certainly a guy that was going to get drafted. And it's like, if you know that you're going to lose a guy, there's value in that. That's what we talked about last week, guys with trade value. Oliver Dunn has trade value, didn't really fit into the Phillies plans right now. Gives the 40-man some flexibility in that they could move him 4 pieces. Robert Moore was like a second-round pick, Dayton Moore's kid, right? Second-round pick from Arkansas. You can probably go more in depth on him because you had the big board, but I mean, he kind of dropped after his whatever his draft year was, his junior year, his COVID year, or whatever. He was potentially a mid-first round guy, had a bad year, went relatively early, and hasn't necessarily been great for the Brewers. But I mean, you're still talking about a potential big leaguer, and then you get a young lottery ticket type. It's a good trade for the Phillies too. And so I think it works for both. You have Turner, you have Stott. If you're Phillies, Dunn was going to be a depth piece, utility piece. He might factor in as the second baseman for the Brewers this year.
He might. So Dunn's numbers are super interesting. Obviously, he's an older prospect. I believe he's been through the Rule 5 draft before unpicked. In fact, I think the way the Brewers got him was via the Rule 5 draft, the minor league portion last year. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. In Double-A this year, he hit 271, 396, 506 with 27 doubles, 21 home runs, 82 walks, 16 stolen bases, a 902 OPS. Eastern League All-Star, went to the AFL, and he was like the breakout prospect of the year in the AFL. Hit 342, 455, 616 with 12 extra base hits, 6 doubles, 4 triples, 2 home runs, 12 stolen bases, 1.071 OPS. So, I mean, he's hot, man. He's mashing. I like this kind of move when it's just like an organizational fit, right? Like, Dunn needs an opportunity in a spot where there's not a ton of infield depth. That is exactly where the Brewers are, just like you said. And the Brewers farm system is absolutely loaded. They're not going to miss their 15th and 27th overall guys, especially coming off not that great years.
Right.
Okay. Are you ready for this, man?
I'm
The
always ready.
underwhelming moment everyone has been waiting for.
What team are we starting with?
Who do you want to start with?
I,
You can pick.
I'm most intrigued by what the Twins did or didn't do.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, if I had to put money on it, I would say it was probably a not real take you by surprise day, and it was
Let,
Rodriguez and Martin.
let's do this. How about this?
Okay.
We'll go through team by team in your order of choice, and you can make a guess at how many prospects each org added. And then if you're feeling adventurous, you can also guess who the guys are. And then we'll kind of dig into any surprises after that.
So I would guess the Twins added just Erod and Martin.
Correct. 2 for 2.
Okay, good. That's all they should have added.
Yeah. So overall, Twins, if you include their minor league free agent guys, they added Junior Severino, Yair Camargo, and then Austin Martin and Emmanuel Rodriguez. Pretty cut and dry for the Twins. I don't think there was any surprises. Some of the guys that we talked about last week that weren't added, Aaron Sabato, Anthony Prado, Deshaun Kersey, I think is like one of the like more likely names to get picked from the Twins org, if anyone does. But Ricardo Olivar is a guy we talked about who's kind of in the lower minors, unlikely to get picked, even though he had a great season. So fair to say that there's not really any surprises there for the Twins from your perspective.
No, and I think you're right on with Kersey maybe being the most likely to be selected. Those four, I think it's perfect. Now, does that put the Twins at 36?
Maybe we can get a quick check from producer Theo. Exactly where they are. I thought there were more than that, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
38 now.
So, and the reason you leave those spots is now you can still make moves, and there's still probably some guys on the kind of the periphery of that roster that you can make more moves. I really don't think the Twins will make a selection in the Rule 5 draft.
Agreed.
But if you have the opportunity to add a guy, now you have those spots. Or if a guy hits, and what the Twins will certainly do is some players got DFA'd today to make room. The Twins will probably be looking to add some arms, maybe 2 arms off waivers, just because it's like, hey, we can give this a shot. And then as rosters fill up, you try to slide them through waivers. And
so you don't know this. So producer Theo has just dropped a bomb from your perspective. This is about the biggest news of the day. Cal Quantrill was DFA'd by the Guardians today. 2 years of team control. I think he's like projected via arbitration to make about $6.5 million in 2024. Wouldn't necessarily be surprised if he's traded here in the next day or so.
Twins loved him out of college.
Oh, really?
Loved him. Yeah, absolutely. That I would be. Do you think he's gonna get traded, or do you think he's just gonna be claimed off waivers?
I think he's gonna get traded.
Okay. Well, that's a name, and when I see that name, I'm like, oh yeah, Twins are all over that. That to me is a name that I know with 100% truth the Twins were super interested in when he was drafted. So, and Felvey, I think there's the connection of Felvey. He was drafted by the Padres, right? Traded to the Cleveland. There's connections there for sure. So I like that. I like that, and taking the chance for, 6.5 is kind of a lot on a maybe fringe pitcher, but I think there's stuff there. He's dealt with injuries, dealt with elbow stuff. I like that name. I like that a lot, actually.
Really not a great 2023, right? But not far removed from back-to-back seasons of, 1.8 and 2.0 F4. Last season was a struggle. 5.24 ERA. His FIP was 4.79. Expected ERA 5.85. I do, if I recall, his strikeout percentage last year was 13.1. That is almost not manageable. If I recall, looking at his splits, he did have a much better September and kind of a bounce back.
Okay, but can you give me this, and then we can get back on topic. What are his like pitch type breakdown?
You're gonna have to fill like 30 seconds of time while I get to that.
Okay. Well, otherwise Theo can throw that out, and we can move on and come back to Quantrill.
Let's do that. Theo's homework is to see what Quantrill's pitch usage percentages were in 2023. Thanks in advance.
And even back further too, to see if it's changed. But anyway, okay, let's move on. So let's go to the Brewers.
Okay, Brewers it's good because I think we talked about last week in our kind of preview, right? Brewers were like pretty much the team with like one cut and dry decision and like a bunch of like not really sure. How many guys do you think they added?
So I would guess, if we're counting done, I would go with 4.
I'm not counting done.
Okay, so I'm going to say 3, and I'm going to say Cairo for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Blaylock, because I think that happened yesterday, and then a pitcher. I'm guessing they're adding a pitcher because they're running out of pitchers. Who knows with Woodruff? Who knows with Burns? Who knows with Peralta? So I'm going to say, yep, it's going to be a pitcher, and I don't know which one.
You're 2 for 2 on the Twins. You're 2 for 3 on the Brewers. They only added 2 guys.
Okay.
Jefferson Caro and Bradley Blaylock. Blaylock being by far the guy that we talked about the most on our preview episode last week. They're number 17 overall prospect per MLB pipeline. Big arm. Just got to work on more consistency. So that's the Brewers. I think, yeah, like we said, least interesting set of decisions coming in, although the trade did make things a little bit more interesting for them today. All right, producer Theo's got Quantrill's pitch arsenal usage. Let's have it, man. Ooh.
I can't see that though, but can you?
That's so beautiful. We are looking at like a beautiful set. We're so like such old dudes. We're like squinting at the screen, unable to see it. Looks like
if I go bigger.
sinker 41%.
There we go. Now we're talking.
Theo's got us on like 200% zoom because we're both like 40. Sinker 41%, cutter 24%, split finger 12.3, curveball 11, changeup 10.1, four seam fastball 1.2.
Okay, so he's basically fastball, curveball, changeup, fastball.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing that I could totally see the Twins doing is they say we're gonna take something, a pitch, and we're gonna just modify it, right? And that because the Twins have recently become the slider heavy team, right? There's no slider there. There's a curveball there.
I feel like they're now a changeup heavy drafting team.
Right, but do we see like this thing where we're like, okay, let's take a shot on him and let's see if we can develop some sort of sweeper, some sort of other two-plane pitch, right? Changeup not very often. How good is the changeup? Like to me, there's just that's a lot of fastball.
Location's pretty good.
And that's the thing. If he can locate 4 different fastballs.
Well, so here's my question then. See how much of a tangent we got off on. Here's my question on Quantrill. Are you gonna pay $6.75 million for him in this? I feel like I'm broken record with this. If they're cutting payroll some, and Doogie had on Twitter today, basically saying under someone's kind of like here's like what an ideal offseason could look like. He was basically like, Sounds like they're not really interested in free agents. It's all going to be trades. Are you really going to pay $6.75 million for a guy who you are not going to guarantee innings to?
Well, no,
That's
you're
Kyle
not.
Farmer gone if you're bringing him in.
Right, but here's the other thing too is he comes with this arbitration projection, right? And if they don't, if the Guardians don't offer him that money, how much is he going to get on the open market? Is it going to be $7 million or $6 million? Not in a single year.
Mm-hmm.
Could the Twins like negotiate this multi-year deal where there's so much guaranteed? Like I think there's creative ways to do that where you say, okay, the Guardians are gonna DFA him or non-tender him. But if the Twins say, hey, we want to take a look at this guy, we can get him for X amount of dollars guaranteed over X amount of years, and if it doesn't work out, we cut ties.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a 1 deal, in my opinion, there's no bad 1 year deals. Even Joey Gallo, 1 year, that money's just what it is.
I
And
mean, that was
so,
about as close as it gets, but sure.
but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you could roll the dice on 6 million.
Yeah.
And if he turns out to be really good and there's team control, I mean, he's going to make more money for himself. And that's why you can say, okay, we'll do 2 years, 9 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he's like, hey, 4 and 5. If I get 6 million this year and I'm terrible, I ain't getting 3.5 next year. I'm not making 9 over 2 years.
Yep.
And to try to spread it out for the Twins a little bit. So I think there's ways to go about it aside from saying, are we going to pay 6.5 to 7 million for a guy that might not be more than number 5 starter?
Mm-hmm.
I think the Twins have the ability to turn him into something really good, especially based on how they felt before. And the thing that may give an organization pause is the Guardians have literally taken no names and turned them into Cy Young caliber pitchers.
This is true.
And if you can't do it with this guy, can anybody do it with this guy? The Rays are like, yeah, we can do it. Everybody else is like, maybe not worth it. So those to me are, kind of both ends of the spectrum. For me as a Twins fan, I would love that. That would be one of the more exciting type additions as opposed to some of the junk that they might scrap heap.
Yeah.
Oh, look what we found in the pile of junk
For sure.
In January, February. So that is intriguing. And for not knowing about it more than 10 minutes ago, I'm now intrigued.
For sure. Multiple Jeremy videos on how to fix Cal Quantrill coming at you on Twins later this week.
Let Parker deal with that stuff. I just talked about
there you
it.
go. There you go. Okay, let me close the book on that by saying this. I assume if the Twins went after Quantrill, that you would not be happy unless they brought in a starter of a much higher caliber in addition to him. Fair?
I mean, I would want them to kind of hedge their bets and not just acquire one guy, right? Regardless of who it is, unless they're trading for a top end guy, but you need to have depth, so you're going to have to bring multiple guys regardless, right? Gray's gone, Maeda's gone. It doesn't matter who you're not filling those innings with just one person.
Yep, this is true. I guess we're seeing it in slightly different ways, though, right? Like you're seeing it as like, how are you getting to the end of the season in terms of your innings and like getting through them? I'm thinking about it as you've got Pablo and Joe Ryan maybe starting playoff games.
No,
Who
you have
the
Billy
heck are
Ober.
you going to after that?
You have
maybe
Ober. Like Ober and Ryan to me are kind of the same.
Sure.
Paddock's kind of a wild card.
Yeah.
I think Chris Paddock could be a dude. But Tommy Johns hasn't thrown a ton. How many innings can you count on him for? Louis Varland is
a reliever now.
He's not though. I mean, he'll be their fifth starter. But I would love for him to be a full-time reliever.
I think he might end up being. We'll see.
But then you need probably 3 more guys. Not necessarily of all like they're going to be major league starters to start the season, but you need 3 more guys throughout the organization. Like, is Josh Winder considered in that? I don't know. Simeon Woods Richardson, no. Like David Festa, yet. I mean, how far is Marco Raya away? Not yet. Like I would want to leave the offseason with 3 new names, and maybe they're the not exciting Homer Bailey-ish type names.
Mm-hmm. Oh man.
But you know what I mean? You need 3 dudes, and you need one of them to hit. And if 2 of them are god awful, you move on, right? There was a way back in the day. Theo's gonna know this one. The Twins signed a former Oakland A pitcher that was really, really good. Who?
Joe Blanton.
Rich Harden. Right? And it was that type of Theo's the man. It was that type of deal that it's like you take your shot, and Harden never. I mean, it never worked out. But take your shot, and then if it does work out, you got something. And so, yeah.
You've taken me from extremely excited about the offseason at the beginning of this episode to nothing's going to happen until February, and the Twins are going to sign Rich Harden.
Yes.
That's what spending 30 minutes with you gets me. My God. Okay, let's move on.
45 minutes, bro.
45. Okay, let's talk about the Cubs. I'm going to give you a quick recap here because I think we said coming in they had the most interesting group of prospects to kind of potentially pick from, right? So here's a 10-second recap of guys they might have considered. Right-handed pitcher Michael Arias, their number 12 prospect. Shortstop Luis Vasquez, he was already added as a minor league free agent. Right-handed pitcher Porter Hodge, 26-year-old at Double-A. Catcher Pablo Aliendo, 27th overall prospect. Right-handed pitcher Cole Franklin, and other possibilities, Bailey Horn. And then we also talked about Jonathan Perlaza, who we realized mid-episode was a minor league free agent. Right. How many guys do you think the Cubs added? Yeah, you're never gonna nail this one. I'm confident that I'm finally gonna get you.
3.
And those names were?
Arias, Hodge, Franklin.
Oh, 2 out of 3. Man, I thought I was gonna get to be irritated with you for the rest of the episode. Nice, man. Yep, they added Arias, they added Hodge, they also added Bailey Horn, who we did not spend a ton of time talking about last week. So kind of boo earns on us. But he's a lefty pitcher at AAA, 28.5 K percentage and a 13 ball on base percentage last year. He's just absolute death on lefties. And we did not spend a ton of time talking about him. He was kind of one of the other names under consideration. So the trend for the Cubs is they protected guys with stuff and velocity. And they really went after arms, which I think is real interesting.
It's the way of the world, right?
Yep.
Take shots on as many arms as possible and hope something sticks, because if you put all your eggs into one guy and his arm blows up, man, it ain't no good. So Franklin didn't get the call, huh? The more I got closer, I'm like, yep, I can see that being a thing.
No, Franklin.
But Hodge made a lot of sense. I thought he would get added. And Arias, he wasn't probably going to get drafted, but like I mentioned before, trade value and likely to be one of those guys that, without looking at stats, probably has the potential to be a 4th option.
Yep. And all 3 of those guys performed better than their baseball card, back in the baseball card numbers would kind of indicate, right? If you look at their xFIP, if you look at their K percentages, the trend there is a need for greater consistency to walk less guys, things that are common. I think at that developmental stage, the stuff and the velocity is undeniable, I think, for all 3. Not bad, Jeremy. I think you got what is that? 3, 6, 7, 8, 6 out of 8, essentially.
That sounds right. I mean, that's my shooting percentage when I play basketball.
On your kids' hoop?
Yeah, when there's nobody guarding me.
Not bad. Nice, man. Okay, so that covers it. We should do this again for next next opportunity that presents itself, we'll keep you in the dark. We'll surprise you with information, and we'll get your hot take reactions to off-season news.
It'd be really hard to do on the trade deadline because I'm very much into that. Wintertime is pretty easy because it's like even if I mean to look at stuff, I'm sitting in a gym with no service. I can't see anything. Sitting in a bar without service, I can't see anything. So this one was easier. Usually I'm relatively plugged in, but I guess if there's enough Coors Lights involved,
I like that your two possibilities in life of places that you could possibly be are a like middle school gym or the bar.
Why is that? Why? I could be at school during the day.
No, I understand why. I just think it's funny that those two things sit right next to each other. It's like you go to work, and then the logical next step after leaving work and having to spend all day with children is I need to go to the bar.
Well, but usually it's opposite. See, middle school basketball's at 4:15. So done at 5:15, and then you got to eat, But high school basketball now starts. Now I got 2 in high school playing basketball. So those games will start later. So it'll go school, bar, then high school basketball. It's just
so you're going to be you're going to be one of those heckling, troublemaking.
No, I'm actually not going to be drinking because I'm the one that announces the games for the live stream.
Oh, hey, that could make it extra entertaining.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Theo says school, bar, game, back to bar as another.
Sometimes you have to. I mean, our football team, high school football team, sidebar, I announce all the football games, and we made it to in Wisconsin. It's level 4, which is the game before the state championship. So last Friday night had a almost 2-hour drive to go announce, and usually we get like 300 viewers for our games, 300, 400, 1,900.
Whoa!
Yeah, it was a big deal. Didn't win, but yeah, it was fun, and I rode solo because my mate, he officiates basketball, and basketball season started now. So it was just me and 1,900 people in 1,900 people's living rooms on a Friday night just talking about football.
I can't think of any way I would less like to spend time than with you in my living room. All right, let's
come on now.
Let's move on and finish out with questions, and then we'll call it a day. So question, this one's been hanging for a couple of weeks, so apologies. We went super over last week. This one from Keaton34 on Twitter. He asked this kind of in between AFL or prior to our Rule 5 protections kind of preview. What do the Twins see in Sabato? Why protect him? They didn't. Also, and this is kind of the second part of the question I'm really interested in. When can I expect Jordan Carr's hype to start rising? I know he's 26, but he seems like dominating and isn't as high up on some rankings as I thought. Do you want to talk about Jordan Carr, or do you want me to give some numbers from 2023 first, and then you can share some thoughts?
I think you're more on the Jordan Carr hype train, so I would like for you to start with that.
I don't know that that's true. So Jordan Carr is a lefty pitching prospect, 6'2", 210, 26 years old. So 26 years old. So a little bit of an older prospect. He's mostly spent 1 year at a particular level. Spent most of 2023 at high A. 60.2 innings pitched. Put up a 1.48 ERA, so just way too good for that level. Got a brief taste of Double A. Struck out just under 25% of batters. Walked 7.3% at high A. That's really strong. Doesn't have a ton of velocity, but just he has this like lefty, nasty kind of release angle, release height thing that creates some deception. It's a very like 3/4 kind of slotty delivery that I think makes his stuff difficult to pick up, and some really interesting breaking pitches. So he had a really strong AFL performance. I was a little bit surprised he didn't make the AFL All-Star game. Had a bunch of scoreless outings, more than held his own. Will likely be starting next year in Double A. And I think he's the type of guy, and I'll be curious for your thoughts here, Jeremy. Like, if he turns into something, it's a bonus. He's kind of like in the Cody Funderburk mold, right? Of like, there's something interesting and unique there. He's clearly deceptive to hitters. He's performing well, or has performed well at every level he's been at. So you keep going and you kind of see what you have as he gets tested at each new level, without necessarily kind of assigning him, unfair hype or pressure or top prospect status. Fair enough.
Right, exactly fair. And when you're talking about a lefty, like I'm like, okay, so Cody Funderburk is kind of the better version of this. But the reality is, when you turn on any team that's not the Twins, and they bring in a relief pitcher, what do you least want to hear that this pitcher does? What's your what don't you want to hear? The team that your favorite team's playing, you're like, shoot, this guy throws 102 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How hard does Jordan Carr throw?
Low 90s.
Okay. I would love for my favorite team to come in and face the funky, deceptive, crafty lefty out of the pen. I'll bring in a right-handed guy, and if he strikes me out, great. He doesn't – the guys aren't going to fear him. Teams aren't going to like, oh, no. Mm-hmm. And so that's why he doesn't get the hype, because he's and I don't mean to say a dime a dozen, because it's hard to throw a baseball. It's extremely 100%.
Hard.
But in the grand scheme of this baseball thing, he's a dime a dozen. He's a lefty, which gives him a little bit more staying power or sticking power, or maybe more opportunity. But you can find these guys. And if he's pumping 98, then it's like, oh, okay. But crafty lefty reliever at 25 and high A.
Let's see how it goes. We'll see how it goes.
If he gives you anything, great. If not, that's where I'm
at. Last question. I'm going to call it. Wait, is this question from you?
Yeah, man.
From Jeremy. Noah Miller won a Gold Glove today. Cedar Rapids Colonel's shortstop. We've talked a little bit about his hitting on the podcast, and him making strides. If you look at splits month by month in the second half of 2023, also being young for the level. Big deal. Excited about Noah Miller, or still kind of on the fence?
I'm asking your question.
Okay. Big deal, yes, and here's why. It's a big deal because he was by far and away the best fielding prospect in all of minor league baseball in 2023. Noah Miller amassed 16 defensive runs saved at shortstop at Cedar Rapids. Now, that DRS metric is on a major league scale. So 1 DRS for Noah Miller equals 1 DRS for Carlos Correa. Second best fielding performance in all of minor league baseball was 8 defensive runs saved. So Noah Miller, head and shoulders above pretty much everyone defensively in the minor leagues, and shortstop prospects who can really pick it are going to find work. So I know the jury is still out, and there's still ways to go with the offense with the hitting, even though I'd argue that he made strides. But it is a big deal, because if he's that good defensively, he's going to find a job, even in kind of a utility role. So that's my 2 cents.
I think that's fair, right? Utility floor. Pedro Florimon played in the.
That's right.
So yeah, and I think I maybe been harder on him than.
He's a Wisconsin guy. How can you not be?
My expectation for Wisconsin born and bred is higher than.
Tell that to the college football team or the college basketball team.
Okay, so I've been off social media, so I don't know how the basketball team's doing. But a lot of those guys, ironically, are from the state of Minnesota.
That's true. That's true. The Lakeville to Madison pipeline.
Pipeline. But I feel like if I'm using a second round pick or a comp pick, I would like the ceiling to be higher than the ceiling is higher. And not all those guys make it. But if what we're looking at right now is he's going to be a utility shortstop. Carlos Correa is going to be in the big leagues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Royce Lewis could play short. Like there's other options, and he's got to be better than those guys. I think there's value, so I think he gets added when the time comes. I just really, really hope that dude starts to hit like 240, 250, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, he's a prospect. Because right now, for me, he's not in the top 15, right? Top 20 maybe.
Next year is a big year for sure. I agree.
And I think like when the Twins, whatever that Twitter, their development Twitter put out his like defensive highlights, that's the type of stuff that they need to put out more, because you see the home runs, you see the big hits. You don't see, there were some plays where I'm like,
insane.
Yeah. And that's the type of stuff I think fans need to see more to appreciate how good he was defensively, because you hear, oh, he's really good defensively. And it's like, well, it's Cedar Rapids.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So
I think, yeah.
I knew that the Gold Glove thing wasn't on the running order, and I'm like, that's probably something we should talk about because it is pretty cool. I mean, Jason Kanzler won 2 Gold Gloves in college, and he never made it. So who knows?
A good catch, dude. A good catch for sure. Glad you put it on there. All right, let's wrap up for today. Just a big continue thank you to folks for sending in questions, for supporting the show. Ways that you can do that: download episodes, retweet our content, interact, ask us questions, help us grow the show. It is appreciated, as are positive reviews on your podcast platform of choice. We will be back sometime next week. We're going to try and keep rolling through Thanksgiving week and beyond. Jeremy, people are starting to ask questions about the 2024 draft.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, besides me just saying, how many pages is your big board at? Like printer pages?
We can. It's about the same. It's about 150.
It's going to be more.
It's definitely going to be more. We need some thoughts from people on what is the best way to present that content. Like, what do you want us to do? We can go position by position and do like top 5s, top 10s. We can take a chunk of the board at once. If you have thoughts and you're interested in 2024 draft content, let us know. I will be ready to start tomorrow. Jeremy will say it's too early, but he will be overruled. We're also lining up some guests, man, for after Thanksgiving. We're going to do a deep dive into each team's farm system with an expert. So I'm excited to drop who those people are. If we start with the Twins, I think Twins Twitter will be excited for who we have a forthcoming collab with. And
will Jeremy be excited?
You'll be excited. You guys will be excited for sure.
Okay,
all right, man. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys so much for listening. Always fun. We'll catch you guys next week.